Are you a lover of all things dark and creepy, of graveyards and monsters, haunted houses and spooky legends? Then welcome to Lore. I'm Aaron Mankey. For close to 10 years now, I've been sharing history's darkest stories with millions of listeners around the world. Tune in each week as we explore the folklore, ghost tales, and local legends that delivered the chills you're looking for. Learn more and subscribe today over at lorepodcast.com.
Visit Avery.com, A-V-A-R-Y, for the most up-to-date news and information on Team Avery.
Avery, 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 Avery,
This is the Gala Show. I'm your reporter on the beat, Gala Avery. On this episode, you may know my guest as a director of action titles such as First Kill, Line of Duty, Escape Plan 2, Hades, and 2012 Silent Night. His newest film, Werewolves, is about a supermoon that turns people into, well, you guessed it, werewolves. The movie has some of the coolest werewolf transformation and design I've seen, and it's in theaters exclusively starting December 6th. Today on the mic, I have director Stephen C. Miller. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, how's it going?
Really, really good. Before we bring up the topic for today, I have a question for you. I was going to just ask you what movie got you interested in filmmaking, but before the mic started rolling, we just kind of started chatting about life and family and stuff, and I found out that you are a father to 2 children. I think you said 15 and 10.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you one of my other favorite questions to ask, especially fathers. What are the movies that you're showing your children to get them interested in movies?
I mean, that's an easy one. We started out with things like Indiana Jones. And
that's like their gateway.
That was their gateway. Yeah, Indiana Jones was something that my kids fell in love with early on. E.T. was something they fell in love with early on. Back to the Future. I was trying to show them things that I know I loved growing up. The Goonies was a big one.
Were those movies that your parents showed you growing up then? Or
No, because my parents weren't big movie people. They liked movies, but they were more like, here's a movie on a Friday night, go rent something, come back home with pizza and watch it. And so it was like me and my brothers picking out our movies.
Yeah.
And so they really didn't have a sort of way to show us. We just sort of rented our own stuff.
Mm-hmm. From the video store.
From the video store. Classic, Blockbuster, or mom and pop, whatever we were at the time. And so that's really those are the movies I gravitated to. And so those are the movies I've shown my kids. I mean, we have shown them Jaws, which was a wild night for my 10-year-old to watch Jaws. I mean, he was into it. And then it was like, oh no, I don't know if I can go to the beach again, but it was awesome.
That's also the thing. So my brother and I, we have 2.5 years apart. And so my dad was really, really strict with me about R-rated movies and what I was allowed to see and wasn't. But then by the time that I was able to see something, my brother, who's 2.5 years behind me, had either already seen it
right.
or was getting to see it because I was older. So to have that kind of 5-year age gap is kind of a big one when you're trying to show your kids stuff.
It is, and we have to sort of try to be cautious. I mean, look, we showed them Gremlins, and I really wasn't, I didn't remember that Gremlins was so graphic until we saw it.
A little scary.
It's scary. It's a Christmas movie. I mean, there's a whole scene where she talks about Santa getting trapped inside of a chimney and dying, right? I mean, at one point they throw a gremlin into the microwave and it explodes. I mean, so I'm sitting there, I'm slow head turn to my wife as she's slow head turning to my 10-year-old, who we're all just going, oh no, what did we do? But, at the same time, he loved it and had such a good time with it that we're like, okay, so, he's not as, I guess innocent that we might think.
But also these movies that you're showing your children, if you saw them around that same time, you turned out okay.
And that's what we had big talks about was well, we're okay, right? I mean, they're fine. I mean, Temple of Doom, again, is an Indiana Jones movie where they're eating brains and he rips into a guy's heart. There's scenes where we were like, oh man, this is intense. And I can't believe this is rated PG, or when we were kids, we were watching it. But, we just felt like if our kids could handle it, they would tell us if they couldn't. And they just, we just kind of show them what we loved.
That's amazing. Now, as always, my guest gets to bring their topic to the mic. Stephen, why don't you tell us what your topic is and why you decided to choose it?
I thought I would talk about dealing with some of the veteran actors I've dealt with, and that's just simply because I know a lot of independent filmmakers probably have that question. I know they ask me all the time, how do you deal with guys that you've been growing up watching your entire life? So I thought that'd be fun to talk about. But before I bring up the topic, it's time for a commercial break.
back by popular demand. The Video Archives merch store is up and running. Get your favorite t-shirts, hats, notebooks, stickers, and more at videoarchivesmerch.com. You know me. I write all my notes in the Notes on Cinema notebook, the Gala edition, of course. Check out videoarchivesmerch.com to get yours today.
The Fall Line is a deep dive true crime podcast focused on cold cases that could be resolved if the public knew about them. You'll hear about missing people whose families have been searching for decades, John and Jane Doe cases from across the country in desperate need of public attention, unsolved serial homicides like the Atlanta Lovers Lane murders that never made the national news. The Fall Line digs deep, interviewing the families, law enforcement, and experts closest to the crimes to bring you cases you've never heard of and explore what can be done today to solve them. Find The Fall Line wherever you listen to podcasts.
In the dry states of the Southwest, there's a group that's been denied a basic human right.
In the Navajo Nation today, a third of our households don't have running water.
But that's not something they chose for themselves. Can the Navajo people reclaim their right to water and contend with the government's legacy of control and neglect?
Our water, our future, our water, our future.
That's in the next season of Reclaimed, the lifeblood of Navajo Nation. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, thanks so much for being a loyal listener. If you want to keep up with me off mic, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Gala Avery.
And we're back.
You heard it here. We are going to be talking about working with veteran actors. I've got 30 minutes on the clock and our time starts now. Okay, this was really interesting to me because when I was looking at your filmography, I knew that you had worked obviously with Sylvester Stallone and I knew that you had worked with Bruce Willis.
Right.
But when I really started getting into it, man, you've worked with a lot of different veteran actors. I guess like a good place to start though is kind of your background. Like how did you get into filmmaking in the first place?
You know, originally I was a skater kid. So I was in the skate scene. And so I was just filming a lot of skate videos. I mean, anything I could film. I had 3 younger brothers who skated. I skated. So we were just skating and making videos. And at that point, it turned into editing. And I thought that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life was edit. And then directing seemed like so far-fetched that just wasn't something that was going to happen. And in film school, I just got together with a few kids and was like, what if we just made our own movie? And somehow we made the movie for 0 money in 0 days. And the next thing you know, I was selling it to Dimension Films.
That's amazing.
In LA.
Wow.
So it was
that's
a
like
wild
a track
story.
that people like dream of having almost.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I think that's part of it too, is that, I mean, we made the movie in 2005. And if you think about it, I didn't sell the movie till 2007. So that was 2 years of LA, sleeping in my car on couches, trying to finish the movie, trying to get the movie in front of people to see it. It was a wild ride.
Yeah, and people also think like when you have a success like that, like, oh, like I was making movies with my friend and then all of a sudden it was sold, that it's like that's how it happens. But as you said, there's that 2 years in between. And like I know like my big example always is Pulp Fiction. Like
Right.
Quentin and Roger, they wrote it, the script went into turnaround.
Yeah.
It almost didn't get made. And there are those moments where it's like you're, as my dad would say, you're eating cockroaches to survive because you literally are like bleeding for your art.
Almost literally. Like, I mean, I would be sleeping in my car with parking tickets lined up because you can't really be in Santa Monica anywhere without parking tickets. And so it was me trying to get people off Craigslist to finish the movie, which was wild.
Wow,
and
that
you know,
sounds
we had
great.
literally had
You're like doing what Sean Baker did before Sean Baker did it for Tangerine.
It was unreal. And literally had guys that, like, one of the guys who scored the movie, Jamie, he was doing Gears of War at the time, but he was looking for an assistant or something on Craigslist and saw my ad looking for a composer, had me come in, liked the movie enough to where he's like, look, I'm doing Gears of War right now. Maybe I have time on the weekends. And that's why it took so long for me to finish my movie, is because I was letting people do it as needed, where they would score the film,
because
sound design.
They wanted to.
It was sort of something about, I guess, my energy and how I was coming in and passionate about what I wanted to do. And I'll be honest, like, I was just trying to get the movie to a point where what I thought would happen was El Mariachi status, was they'll like it, they'll give me more money to go make a bigger version of it, right? And it just so happened that Dimension was like, no, we're just going to put it out. And I was like, no, wait, it's terrible. Don't put it out. And they're like, no, it's fine.
Man, that's crazy. I can't believe that that's like really what happened. That's
Yeah,
wild.
it was wild. And then it was another one of those moments where you become that guy and everyone's like, okay, now you're going to make giant movies. This is it. You've hit this. All of a sudden you have an agent, a manager, and you're going into meetings. We're talking about meeting for movies like Friday the 13th or Last House on the Left and meeting Wes Craven. And that happens for like 3 years. And then nothing happens.
Yeah, it's like you're offered every single thing, and then it's like, wait, where am I going?
3 years into that offering stage of where I was like, you're going to do this movie, you're going to do that. Studios would die, which like Fox Atomic died, Paramount Vantage died, which I had movies set up at.
Yeah.
MGM basically died, which I had movies set up at. And I'm 3 years after the movie I'd already made and sold, and you're only as good as your last movie. And I'm sitting there with nothing at that point. And so I had to like start back over. And you know, I had made enough friends in the business to where they were making really small indie movies. So I was back to square one, making indie movies. And I made a movie called Under the Bed. And then I made a much different movie called The Aggression Scale. And The Aggression Scale was sort of like Home Alone rated R. And that sort of hit with people and did South by Southwest and did a couple really great film festivals to where it sort of catapulted me to get a movie called Silent Night, which was a remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night. And that's when I really got to meet my first actor that I felt like was Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit off mic about Malcolm McDowell because he's like an Ojai
Yes.
resident.
Yep.
And like listeners will remember, he has worked with James Paxton and Adam Rifkin, who I both have interviewed, and he's just like an amazing guy.
Oh man,
like a master of his craft.
He's not just a master; he's the GOAT.
Yeah,
right?
like
the
literally.
The guy is amazing. He's a great storyteller. He's one of those people that you could talk to about anything, and he's got a great story to go along with it. And how we got him was actually fantastic. Like I was prepping the movie in Canada, and he happened to be having breakfast at the hotel I was staying in.
Oh my God.
And we didn't have a lead yet. And we just had Jamie King at the time. And I just sat down with him. He's eating breakfast. And I just sat down. And I said, Malcolm, dude, you're just one of my heroes. I was probably talking a million miles an hour, geeking out. And he goes, whoa, what's going on? And I was like, I have this script. We're here making it. It's legit. This has been a movie. And he's like, oh, yeah, just send it to my people. And then the next day he was on. And that's how it happened.
I love that because again, it's people that want to be a part of movies, and like you experience it like with your first film, like where people are like, oh, you know, I'm doing this thing, but like on the weekends I can do this.
Right.
And Malcolm's there, he's having breakfast, and he's like, oh, this is awesome. I want to do this.
Yeah, and I think it's just because this kid just sat down in front of him, right?
Yeah,
And it was like, oh, wait, okay.
And it's your passion
Yeah.
that like allowed you, and I guess that was like your first veteran actor that you kind of
Yeah, and I think he taught me a lot, to be quite honest with you. He really kind of walked me through, because there's a lot of things that go into when you're dealing with bigger actors on set and how that is sort of has to be done and portrayed, and like how you even talk to them in front of the crew.
It's star
It's
power.
star power. It's like, hey, you don't talk to them. You pull them to the side. You talk. There's just so many different things that I was not privy to, that when he brought and talked to me, was like, hey, you know, if we're going to have this discussion, let's have it over here. But he was really nice about it. There was no like, you know, because you're used to dealing with your friends at that point. I'm used to just talking to Joe Schmo, who was in my film class, like, hey, you need to stand over there and say this line. And Malcolm would look at me like, nah.
Malcolm's like, no, you pull me aside.
You can talk to me over here.
You talk to me over here. We have a conversation
And let's
together.
talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it, especially that. I mean, there are like a lot of big names, as I mentioned earlier. Like you've worked with Bruce Willis twice?
3 times.
3 times.
Yeah.
3 times. What was that like?
So me and Bruce is fun because, so first of all, when I first made my movie with Bruce was 2015. And so Bruce was still Bruce, right? And so there was no health problems or anything like that. When I was talking to Bruce, it was Bruce. And so that was a big deal for me. But what I think a lot of people don't realize is that the studio that I was making it for, which was Lionsgate and EFO, and I didn't know there was those movies, those geezer teaser movies. I didn't know what that was.
I've never heard that term, geezer teaser.
Yeah, like geezer, where they're only in the movie for so long, and then
Oh my God, I love
and
that.
that's to get people in. So it really became a term like somewhere after, but I was doing it, but I didn't realize that's what these movies were. Right when I first got there, I thought Bruce was there the whole time. I had no idea.
But he's really there for just like a day or two. Yeah.
Right? And I didn't catch on to that until like midway through prep, when they're like, no, you got to shoot 30 pages of Bruce in this one day. And I was like, why? They're like, because he's only here for that day. I was like, what? Okay, well, let me talk to Bruce because I need to figure this out with him. No, you don't talk to Bruce. You'll talk to Bruce when he gets there. And I was like when he shows up for set? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, no, but he needs to have time to do these things. And they're like, no, so you'll talk to him on the day. So that was a crash course for me.
Well, because the production is really, or like the studio is really managing him and his time.
100%. And you got to remember, this is also my first really studio movie. This is Lionsgate. This is like studio head execs talking daily, 30 decisions going through 30 different people.
But it's so different than just like sitting down at breakfast with Malcolm McDowell and being like, hey, here's my script. I'm like a guy who like wants to make 100%. A movie. And then here's the studio. Like, no, you don't talk to your actor until they show up.
He's the guy, right? You can talk to him when he gets there, but like it's going to be minimal, and that'll be what it is. And so I remember when Bruce showed up for the first day, and I had mistakenly, did not know, but I had mistakenly shot things first before Bruce got there, because Bruce was late, and so
you have to do 30 pages.
You have to do 30 pages, so I'm shooting all kinds of things around him. And when Bruce got there, his team was like, nah, we don't do things without Bruce. And so we had to reshoot all of that.
Wow.
And so that was my first meeting. And so at first it was very much of a bummer for me, because I was like, I got to talk to him. He was like, hey, I'm going to do this. We're going to work on this. And I was like, okay. But really his team was kind of trying to step in the middle. And then we just had a moment on set. And there was a moment where Bruce was like, I want to do a certain thing. And I said, no.
Wow.
We're not going to do that, because that's not how I need it to happen. I need it to work like it. It was really over having a gun. He was like, I need to have a gun in this scene. And I was like, no, Bruce, you're tied up. There's no gun in the scene. And Bruce was adamant. I need to have a gun. This is the way it's going to go. I need to have a gun. And I think I blacked out. I think I blacked out, because what came out of my mouth was like, no, fuck you, Bruce. You don't have a gun. Right?
Because you're the director and you're like making the choices. And even though he's a star,
it just came out. I was just in everything that had built up to that point of them telling me I couldn't, to the point where I was just like, no, this is what we're going to do. And I remember Bruce looking at me, and he walked off set, and he went to his trailer. And you got to remember, on Bruce days and my first studio movie, every suit possible is there.
Yeah.
They're all there. And so they're all looking at me, and I'm thinking, I'm fired. This is day one. I'm done. And so I go and I talk to Bruce in his trailer. I walked in. We didn't even really talk. He just looked at me, and I said, look, man, I'm just trying to get my movie out. I'm just trying to do it. And the guy just gave me a hug. And he was like, how long was it going to take before you just told me to fuck off? And
wow, because that's like when he like really respected you, because he's like he's not a puppet for the studio.
He didn't want to be a puppet. He didn't want to be around someone that didn't know what they were doing, or didn't have an idea of what they knew or they were doing. I don't know if I needed to know exactly, but I needed to have some kind of passion about what I was doing.
Wow, and then you worked with him twice more. And was the other two times, unfortunately, when he had his diagnosis and when he was?
So the next two times with Bruce were really easy. And no, not yet. So it was 2016, 2017 almost. But he had requested me to come back. Now it was Bruce was calling me.
Because
saying,
he knew that you were not going to be controlled by the...
He was like, look, there's something different about the way you're making these movies. I've done 2 or 3 with the other people. And he was like, the way you're doing them... Because I came into it going, I'm not saying no to movies anymore, because I'd waited so long. And like I said, there was a 3-year gap of not making movies. So I came into this going, I'm just going to make movies. Either the script's going to be cool, or I'm going to make it cool. And Bruce caught that pretty early. And was like, I get what you're trying to do. This isn't easy. You're in a bind. They're putting you in these 16-day movies, 18-day movies. I don't know how you do it, but you're getting me through the day easily. We're not overtime. You're just making my day. And so then he was calling me going, dude, come back. And so Marauders was easy, total blast. And that had Dave Bautista.
Yeah, Dave Bautista. And you've worked with him like
I've
twice,
worked with
right?
him twice. And like Dave was the same way. It was like, he came on set, and Dave was a little bit easier, but Dave felt that sort of passion coming from me of dealing with Bruce, because he didn't know how it would go, and this was his first movie like this. But we just had a total blast.
And also, Dave Bautista seems like just like the nicest guy.
He's the total nicest guy.
That's the thing. It's like whenever I see him do any kind of press, I'm like, this guy's just like a nice guy.
He's a teddy bear, super sweet. In fact, like a lot of my dealings with him or any other actor, like bigger actor wise, is I really don't talk to them about the movie when I first meet them. And like one thing I really learned, even with dealing with Nick Cage, was I didn't talk to them about the movie. Like when I first come and I first sit down with them and deal with them, I'm really talking about life, like in general, like
just to get to know them.
To get to know them as a human being. And I think that literally sets them at ease very early on, that I'm not coming in going, oh my God, this is my vision. We're going to do A, B, C. We're going to have this shot. It's going to swoop around.
And also it humanizes them as a person.
It humanizes them, and they look at me like not a tool.
Especially if you're there and doing a geezer teaser where like they know they're coming in and they're collecting a paycheck.
Right.
And it's like, for an actor, especially like I'm gonna say like Bruce has been in so many things, and
Sure.
like Nicolas Cage has been in so many things, and
Yeah.
all these guys have like done all these acting, and then to come in and do these things for like one day, they might feel like they need to be put at ease. Like, I am a human and I am here to do these things with my director.
Yeah, and I found several ways to do that. Like with Cage, when I met Nick for the first time. So after Bruce, they finally decided, okay, he needs to meet these guys because he has a way with them.
Yeah.
He should be hanging out with them.
Yeah.
So then it was, okay, they'll fly me out to meet with Nick. And so when I flew out to meet with Nick, I had read a lot that Nick loves tattoos. And so I purposely...
You're covered in 'em.
I purposely wore a tank top to the meeting.
Ah,
And
that's
so
smart.
I show up, I'm in a tank top. Nick walks into the restaurant and I see him from the other side of the room. He stands up and has his arms wide open. Yo, look at those arms. And my chest is covered. And like, so the only thing we talked about for the first hour were tattoos and music. And that's just because I set it up that way right off the top.
Yeah,
Like,
because you knew, you did enough research that
Right.
you're like, what is my actor going to connect with?
Right.
And you found your angle.
did the same thing with John Cusack. John wears
Yeah.
all black.
Yeah.
So I wear all black.
That's so smart.
When he said, dude, we're wearing the same thing, I was like, yeah, we're Johnny Cash.
Yeah, no duh.
Yeah.
No duh. What was it like working though with like Nick Cage and John Cusack on the same set?
Oh, that was a lot of fun because those guys are a blast. Like Nick's wild, John is not as wild, but he likes to have fun.
Yeah, my dad is friends with John. He calls him John because whenever he answers phone, he's like, "Hey man, it's Johnny."
Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
Johnny Cusack.
Yeah, we shot it in Biloxi, and there was a nice casino there. So me and Cusack, we had a lot of fun going down to the casino. But both of them together, their energy was always really good, and I think that's crucial for these kind of movies when they know they're only there for a couple of days. It's like to keep them moving is a big deal.
Yeah, and just to have fun.
To have fun, and my sets are moving and have fun because these guys have been doing it so long. They don't want to sit in the chair. They don't want to go wait in their. They
don't want to be
place.
watching their clock. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I only
they
have this
just
many
wanna
hours
be
left.
Going. And I think that's what they love about me is that I'm shooting like 150 setups a day.
Oh my God, that is insane.
I'm blasting through
That's
things, right? We're
cra-
talking
how-
2 cameras.
How are you doing that many setups a day? Like, because some people like don't obviously do that many setups a day. Like that, for people listening that are not in the movies, like that is a crazy amount of setups.
Yeah, it all comes back to my editing background, right? Like, so when I was first getting into movies, it's all editing. And in fact, the cameras that I had, I didn't really know editing machines. So I was editing like pause, move, cut, pause. Was editing in camera by pressing the pause button, right?
yeah.
And so it quickly taught me that the angles, where I needed to move, how I needed to shoot. And it just became something for me that was sort of instinctual that I didn't think I needed a master if I was only going to be in it for 10 seconds. I only shot 10 seconds, right? I didn't spend the whole scene in a master. I would shoot 10 seconds and move on. And I think a lot of the actors became very aware of that. In fact, when I was shooting Escape Plan, and it was Stallone's first day on set, and Batista's already worked with me at this point, right?
Because this is the second
Movie
that
I've done with Batista, but first movie was Sly. And how I always do it, and they knew this, was the first day with these guys, the first shot, the first setup, the first take, I only did one. I just moved on. And it was just sort of to set up like, okay, Steven's going to fly.
like, we're going.
And
like,
so
we're not
Sly,
doing 7,
Sly
8,
sat
9
down
takes.
and I said, he did his line. I said, all right, cut. And he said, what? And I hear Batista go, welcome to a Stephen C. Miller movie.
You also worked with 50 Cent on that movie.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, I love 50 Cent. So it's like when I saw that you worked with him, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And especially like Sylvester Stallone, Dave Bautista, and 50 Cent all on one. Were they like on set all together?
All together.
All together, yeah.
And several times. So they were awesome. 50 was so cool. He actually FaceTimed with my wife, who's a big 50 fan.
Oh, I love that.
So he FaceTimed with her. And another huge fan was Chili from, she was on set. She was a blast. And so all of these guys together is a lot of star power to be on set at one point together. And so you have to really dance around how you deal with them.
Well, because also like if you give preferential treatment to one, you have to make sure it's equal and even.
And it's the same with, and Jamie King was on that set too. So it was like, you have Jamie who needs equal amount of treatment as well as everyone else. And so you have to really sort of play to everyone's, I don't want to say ego, but it is to everyone's egos, right? And make sure everyone feels taken care of and comfortable and safe. And important because my entire job is really to make them feel safe, right? And so a lot of the times that is me talking about other things than the movie, and I keep coming back to that because it's so important to me, even on set, where we're dealing with the hectic nature of what's going on in the scene, and we'll start talking about something random to get them sort of just comfortable and just okay with, okay, what's Steven talking about now? Okay, now we can get into the scene because they don't feel like I'm necessarily pressuring them so hard in what they need to get done. They know what they're doing, right? Yeah. These guys have been around a long time.
They're pros. As they're veteran actors. They come also, a lot of them come from stage background, or they've done tons of movies with tons of people. Like they know, or television. Like when you get like a TV actor that like knows what they're doing.
Oh my God, Chris Maloney.
Yeah.
Chris Maloney, and coming from, NCIS or what was he on? NCIS? What was he on? Something like that. But Chris Maloney, I mean, the guy is a master at that stuff.
Yeah. So he's all good with that. I mean, I just found out like James Van Der Beek has cancer.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah,
know that.
like that just came out that he has cancer, and
Oh,
like
wow.
that he's been doing a bunch of these movies
Because
like he's been like one after the other, and then his diagnosis finally came out like, yeah, I have cancer, and I've been doing like a ton of movies.
Well, that's the reason I stopped. That's one of the big reasons why I really stopped doing the movies with Bruce, and it wasn't because Bruce didn't want me to. Is because on First Kill, the last one we did together, we had a conversation, and he was like, "Hey, I'm Bruce," and I was like, "Huh?" And like we had never met.
Wow, yeah.
And I looked around at everybody else, and I was like, and I pulled his people aside, what's going on, 2017, and they're like, well, look, he's been having a little bit of this or that. And after the movie was done, I went to EFO, the guys, and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I was like, if that's the way Bruce is going to be, I was like, I can't exploit the guy. I don't mind doing movies with him where he knows what he's doing, and he knows that he's here for the day. But if Bruce doesn't know
that he's here,
and this is what this is or what's going on, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I know Quentin commented on Video Archives, like he watched a few of the Bruce Willis movies, and he was saying like when you don't know what has happened to Bruce, and like specifically those movies like after he has his diagnosis, when you don't know, you're gonna look at it and you're gonna be like, oh, these are just like straight to video, like programmers, like whatever, he's not doing a good job. But like when you know like kind of what's happening to him behind the scenes, and like how his health has degraded, you're like, okay, he's doing a really good job for like what he's working with.
Yeah, and that was our last movie, First Kill, which I had to literally walk Bruce through lines, which I had never had to do before.
God, it must have also been crushing for you because
it was a big blow.
You also know him as the guy that like you said F you to, and he gives you a hug.
And that we had talked several times at conversations, like we had actually become friends, right? And so this was sort of rough for me because when you're having to tell Bruce just repeat the lines back to me, it got really tough. It got really hard.
Must have gotten really hard. Okay, so how was it working with Giancarlo Esposito and Aaron Eckhart?
Oh my God, man. Those two are, want to talk about pros, talk about guys that know what to do. Those two are insane. I mean, Aaron Eckhart is a guy that has the entire script memorized. Okay?
Really?
So
the entire thing?
The entire thing.
Not his lines?
Not just his lines, like everybody's lines. And so if you don't come in prepared with Aaron will just keep going. If you don't know your lines, it's fine. He's just going to keep going and you'll catch up. And so that's what I love about Aaron.
Are you doing the casting for this yourself, or is it kind of like you're being called in after the casting's done?
So for Line of Duty, up until that point, which is Line of Duty, all those movies before that, I'm being called in, casting's done. So really they're calling me because the actors are rejecting other directors.
Wow. And they know that you're a guy that the actors get along with.
They know for some reason I'm a guy that with these specific actors, like older actor guys, males.
These action heroes.
Action guys that like, they like me for some reason. And so like, for instance, when they had me meet with Aaron, his agents were like, no, I don't know if they're going to respond to Steven. And producers are like, look, just put him in the room, right? Let's see. Cause he already said no to a bunch of directors. And so we met at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And we're sitting there for 5 minutes, and we're talking. We're having a great time. And he was like, you don't seem like you want to be here. And I was like, bro, this is just not my scene. Like this
Beverly Hills Hotel, like,
let's
get out of here.
This is not my scene. I was like, we can go wherever else you want. I was like, but this is not my scene. And he was like, dude. Next thing I know, we were up at Terran Tacticals, which is where they do all of John Wick's training for gun stuff, and we're shooting guns up at Terran Tacticals.
Yeah, because it's like that's what you guys would rather be doing than sitting in the hotel.
And we just went through a bunch of gun training. And
I want to go do that
for
instead.
Like 2 hours.
Why can't I be going and doing that in meetings instead?
And I'm not even a gun guy. I don't even shoot gun. It was just one of those things. He mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. And so we went up and did it. It was a total bonding thing. And I think that for me is super important, even when we called Giancarlo Esposito, and me and him just bonded about a bunch of things. But like we just sort of bonded over the idea of what the passion side of making movies, the passion side of being grinding making movies, which is what I kept telling these guys is like, look, I'm just grinding with these movies right now because this to me is like an action school boot camp, right?
Yeah.
Like I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to be like, hey, I'm waiting for my one perfect film. I got to get this one movie made. I just looked at it as like, I just got to make movies.
Yeah, because like you feel that passion, that burning desire inside of you to create.
Yeah, it's always been there. And it's even when I was in film school and people were always like, what do you want to make? I remember my film school students. I mean, granted, they all wanted to make like their Requiem for a Dream or My Own Private Idaho or Basketball Diaries or, whatever that artistic movie was, those are the movies I love. But like when it came to me, I was like, I just want to make Bad Boys, and and you could hear the groans, you could hear everybody get crazy. But really, that was my mentality.
But like, also, why do people groan at that when those are movies that we all enjoy?
We all love, no matter what people want to say, we all love these kind of movies, and so I just happen to lean into that,
Like,
and so that's
like,
my thing.
All these action movies I can think of, like Bad Boys, as you mentioned, Die Hard, Rambo. Like these are all movies that if I made one of those, I would be so proud.
You'd be stoked if you
I'd
got
be
to make one of those.
Stoked if I got to make one of those.
And I get to make those all the time. And so for me, that is something that I've always been super grateful for. And I think even talking to these guys, I'm just very grateful when I talk to them. Hey, look, I get to hang out with you. I mean, I watched you do Die Hard. I watched you do whatever that was, Snake Eyes or whatever it is. I watched those movies. I mean, even with Cusack, and we're geeking out on his movies, it's like I watch those, but I'm just here because I love making those.
Because you love making them, and it's such a joy to get to make them together. Okay, the one actor I really had to ask you about was Lance Henriksen.
Oh, man.
Because you worked with him on Scream of the Banshee, and we love Lance Henriksen. I love him so much, and so I had to ask what it was like working with him.
He's a total baller.
I think all these guys are.
They are, but Lance is a different level. Like he's just OG, awesome, and like me and him just had so much fun on set because that was such a bait and switch set because when they pitched that to me, it was a movie, and while we were making it, I'm gonna say halfway through. They were like, oh, we sold this to Sci-Fi Channel, so it's a sci-fi movie.
Oh, so now it's like a TV.
It was a TV thing, and me and Lance like, what? And we were like, what are you talking about? And then because we had shot this movie like hardcore, and they were like, nah, we got to do this A, B, C, D. We got to change this, and that was my first experience dealing with all of that nonsense. But Lance rolled with it, with the punches. Super amazing.
Because it's not his first rodeo.
Not his first rodeo. He's like, look, Steve, you got to deal with this. You got to sit down. You got to take a breath. Because I think at one point I was like, I'm going to throw things, right? And he was like, no, sit down. Let's talk about it. And he really sort of walked me through like, this is what you got to do. You got to give. You got to take. You got to allow them to do some of the process so you can get a creative process going. So he was a big inspiration for me on how to deal with a lot of the pressure or any kind of changes of things like that in the business.
One thing I really love is that when you're telling a story about each of these guys, you kind of say like what they've imparted upon you.
Yeah.
Like with Malcolm, like how he kind of taught you how to deal with a star, or like how to roll with the punches with Lance. So what is like, if you could impart one lesson onto someone else that you've learned from these guys, what would it be?
Be passionate.
Yeah.
I think understanding what your passion is and letting that just overflow to them is important. I think if they understand you're passionate, not necessarily about the movie you're making at the time, but just passionate about being in general with them and hanging out and doing the work, I think they really understand that and they recognize that. And that was something that I would say is important for young filmmakers.
When you read a script, like when you receive, do you ever write your own movies also, or?
Yeah, I do. I only wrote my first one and then I realized I'm not as good at it as everyone else is. And I would rather do things that people are better at. But yeah, and I also felt like I actually liked directing other people's material.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Because I'm not so close to it.
Yeah, because then you can kind of
could just tear it apart.
And you can tear it apart. So when you get a script, because you come from like an editing background, are you storyboarding heavily? Are you ripping up the script?
Yeah, I always do an action pass first, and then we get into like a character pass. But usually it really is heavy storyboarding. Me, the DP, and the production designer, they all know weeks and weeks in advance where I'm going to be and what I'm going to shoot. So,
yeah. So you
it's
guys
really
are doing a lot of prep on these movies.
I do a lot of prep. The movies are shot fast, but the prep time is usually normal prep. We're talking 4 or 5 weeks normal.
That's
right?
great, because I've like been on certain sets where it's like you have zero prep. And
yeah,
then
I couldn't.
When you have to do action with zero prep, it's almost impossible to do.
It's almost impossible just to be safe. And that's a big thing for me is like, I like people to be safe.
Well,
I like them to get through the day.
That's the most important thing on a set.
Yeah.
Is that you are safe, you are happy, and also you are fed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's right. As long as all of those things are working, then the movie sets seem to flow really well. I always find that my films sort of bleed into the energy of the movie. However I am on set, however the energy on set is, that bleeds into the movie. And so I try to make that a thing, right? Like weirdly enough, I'm always the first guy on set. Grips Electrics get there, they're always like, what the fuck's Steven doing here? I'm the first
Get
guy
outta here,
there.
Steven.
I'm
Get
the
outta
first
here.
guy there. And I'm always the last guy hanging out with the camera truck guys or the grip guys in the truck, whatever they're doing.
Well, 'cause you're the captain of the
I like
ship.
to hang out, and
You're
that's
the
part of it.
captain.
Yeah.
Is there one star that you haven't worked with yet that you would love to work with?
I mean, I gotta say, like, someone that I really think is a fantastic actor is Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, Jake is a guy
he's amazing.
He's amazing. He
And
just
he
seems
picks such interesting roles.
always
also.
picks cool roles. He always picks cool roles. He's never the same. He's always kind of a chameleon. He's doing different things. I just think he's sort of got a really great energy that I think me and him would vibe off of. But yeah, he's one guy I would love to.
What about like a female action hero?
Oh man, Sigourney Weaver.
Oh my God.
Sigourney
Is that
would
even a
be.
question?
It's not a question. Sigourney is. I don't have to think about it. You know, it would just be Sigourney.
What kind of movie? What kind of movie would she be in?
Oh
Do you
my
think?
God! If me and Sigourney could do, man, if we could, I would love to get Sigourney in one of these actioneer movies where she could just go almost like a Long Kiss Goodnight, where she could just tear shit up. Like that would be a lot of fun.
I could see like a Sigourney as like a cop action movie.
That
or
would be
something
fun.
Like that would be so much fun. I like, especially. I know we're going to talk probably a little bit. My timer's almost up, but I know we're going to talk a little bit about werewolves in the probably in like the little wrap up. I really liked like the male and female balance in that movie that you brought to it. So
thank you.
I really enjoyed that.
That was important.
Yeah, it was really important.
Yeah, it was important for the movie, you know. And like I said, like this is one of the first movies that I've gotten where I got Frank Grillo the whole movie.
Yeah.
I got Katrina Law the whole movie. Ill Finish Hardish the whole movie. Like, so these characters that I was actually able to have the whole time, and I knew that going into it, so it was important for me to make sure their balance was right, and it wasn't just Frank's movie, right?
Like that it was
everyone's movie, because I don't get that a lot. I don't get to have the female character having a ton of work to do in the movie, and so that was important for me, was really like, how can I make sure that this movie feels balanced and fun for everybody?
Wow, that was a perfect way to end my timer.
Yes.
So that's all the time that we have for today. But Steven, is there any final thought that you'd like to share with the audience?
You know, I'm just hoping everyone gets out to go see Werewolves December 6th. It's going to be playing everywhere. I'm really excited about it.
I saw posters started popping up at AMC.
There's posters everywhere on AMC. I saw some Wild Wall posters in New York and Chicago. They're really making a big push. It's really my first big theatrical release.
That's so exciting to actually have a movie like in theaters,
In
with
theaters.
audiences who get to go see it. And also, I have to say again, I mentioned in my intro, but like the werewolf design and characterization specifically that you do to kind of differentiate, it actually does remind me of like Gremlins 2, like all the different Gremlins.
Totally. We took cues from that 100%. And Alec Gillis, who created these werewolves, who's done Pumpkinhead and great movies like Alien and stuff like that, we talked about Gremlins 2 and talked about how can we shape these guys to be different. And so that was a lot of fun to try to figure out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed myself. So thank you so much to my guest, Stephen C. Miller, for coming on to the show. If you'd like to keep up with Stephen, you can do so on Instagram or Twitter at Stephen C. Miller. And also make sure to catch Werewolves in theaters starting December 6th. I'm Gala Avery, and this has been The Gala Show. The Gala Show is brought to you by Avery.com. This episode was executive produced by Roger Avery and produced by Gala Avery. Music composed by Andy Milburn. As always, I'm your host, Gala Avery. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Despite me sharing the same last name with this charity, I don't have any affiliation with it, besides the fact the issue is very near and dear to my heart. Did you know that in the United States, 2.7 million children currently have a parent in prison, and it's estimated that 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives? I was one of these kids, and as an adult, I am really grateful to be able to give back to Project Avery. Their mission is to build leadership from within by supporting community through programs such as mentoring and outdoor education, and also to remove the stigma surrounding having a parent that's incarcerated. You don't have to feel alone. If you know a kid who could use these resources or would like to donate money or time to the charity, please go to Project Avery, that's AVARY.org, to check out what this amazing charity is all about. Again, that's projectavery.org. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.